you could get yourself into like a muddy situation, right? Like if you don't have it registered and the other person notices you don't have it registered and then they go and register your trademark of your thing, like where are your grounds as a business owner if you guys do have like a same or similar name in the same industry? Like how do you start to figure out who actually owns the thing?
So in the instance you gave where like they scooped it, they registered it before you, but you were using it first. You have common law rights. And you would actually move, would call us, because this enters like, litigation. You would call us, you would actually move to cancel their trademark registration. And so you would have to first submit an application yourself because you can't just cancel someone else's without like taking the attempt to protect your own rights. So you have to put in an application and then you would have to move to cancel their trademark. And you would say that you believed you were canceling their trademark because you had prior rights.
Greetings and welcome back to the Kiss My Aesthetic podcast. I'm so excited to have Lauren on the show today. Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, we have a lot to talk about because you have an area of expertise that I do not. So I'm going to hit you with all the questions that I never knew answers to. But for anyone who doesn't know you yet, can you tell us who you are, what you do, who you help, and how you help them?
Yes. So my name is Lauren Boyd, and I am a small business attorney. I founded my law firm back in 2018. So it's been a minute. And I came from corporate law. I had a background in entrepreneurship. I actually have my first degree is in entrepreneurship. I also have a finance degree, and I had the ability while I was both in my entrepreneurship program to work with the mock legal counsel, which was third year law students. And then when I was going through law school, be on the other side. And so this part of me just always wanted to be involved in the startup phase, in the small business, like just moments that people are creating. I wanted to be a part of that. I went into corporate law, got some incredible experience, and negotiated international contracts, and was like itching, like just like anyone who's listening to this, who's started a business, like, the itch. And I went to my now husband, we were then dating, and said, I think I want to quit my job, my nice, comfortable corporate law job, and start my own business and be a lawyer. Do you want to move in with me and help me pay my mortgage?
I love that pitch. That sounds like an awesome pitch.
We are now married with 2 kids. We've since moved twice. Most recently, actually, to South Carolina to buy him a business. And we are, it feels like we're worlds away from the day that we sat across from dinner, and had this conversation. But since then, we've grown an incredible team. We have gotten to work with such a wide range of clients. And it's just been like loads of fun. And I geek out about this stuff just like you do in your niche. And it's so nice because I've met so many people who do so many incredible things. And it's nice that we can have each other to lead, run ideas past. And I really want today to be just that for your listeners in the legal space.
Perfect.
Because this stuff excites me. And I hope that this will ease some of their stress around it.
Yeah. And that's the thing that I think you learn the longer you're in business is for everything you hate doing, someone else loves it. For me, it's like all the accounting, bookkeeping, legal, it's so necessary and it's so vital to like the health of your organization, to know your numbers and to have your ass covered on contracts and to like make sure that you're running legit. And I think it's easy to get caught up in like the beautiful and the branding and the social media and the stuff that's so visual. And a lot of what you do is behind the scenes in a lot of sense. So tell us exactly, what does Guide My Biz offer? Like, what is your full offer suite of how you help people? And give us a little bit of a picture into like how those services came about.
So when I started, it was just me. And I really kind of like opened my doors just like anyone else opens their doors, and they're like, hi, anybody, talk to me. I had negotiated large service agreements. I had worked in commercial real estate. I had kind of the foundations of everything that I kind of needed to work in the contract transactional negotiation space, and did that at a really high level, but wanted to take and morph that to something that was approachable for small businesses. So we do everything from employee agreements, independent contractor agreements, which on the flip side are also service agreements, right?
Yeah.
Working with people. I mean, we like to say that you can grow your team, invest in real estate, and protect your intellectual property. We've actually trademarked the phrase own your brand and really do all of that with different members on our team. And so I specialize in merger and acquisitions. That's largely what I did when I was in corporate law, was did buying and selling of businesses. What I love about that is this part in merger and acquisitions of the due diligence of reviewing all of the contracts that impact a company as they're either getting ready to sell, or the buyer doing the due diligence of like getting ready to buy and seeing exactly what they're buying. There's usually a real estate component to it. And then there's the deal itself. And in the deal these days, so much of a driver of what you're buying in a lot of businesses is the intellectual property. And so literally M&A is like the dump of all things. And luckily our firm does all the other little pieces for people as they're building their business. And it's been really fun. We get to collaborate with great team members, and really cool companies, and see people who started a business in their garage,
right,
sell their business for multiple six figures and just never thought that that's where they would,
was possible.
would be when it would end up.
Yeah. No, it's fascinating how much of that space, like, you learn the longer that you're in business too, right? Like, I've gotten to know clients who've acquired businesses, sold businesses, merged companies together, all of that stuff. And I think it's so interesting that you brought up the intellectual property part, because there's a story that I heard through a friend of mine who, the woman owned a company and her social media had a huge following, like 300, 400,000 followers. And that's where she got all of her leads. And just before she went to sell her company, she changed the handle of the Instagram to be her name instead of the business company name anymore, and was trying to say that the value of the company was such that was what the number that she put on paper. But all the rest of us in the industry were like, yeah, no way. Like, you absolutely killed the lead generation source. Like, you got all your leads from Instagram. Like, the value of the business is the Instagram. Like, how do you even start to account for the nuance between where the boundaries of your brand lies, right? So you've got this trademark, own your brand. Explain how many different domains, how many different cookie jars can you even have?
So, I mean, it just depends. Every business is totally unique, right? I'll be honest, in a legal space, I hate social media. I hate Instagram. It is so not my strong suit. I was just telling you, we send out a monthly blog, and we only do monthly because we don't want to abuse our email list. Like, we want them, they don't want to hear from the lawyers all the time, but we need a source like of communication to send them legit legal updates and things that they need to know. So I'm like in such a different world than some of my clients, where social media is like the end all be all. We like to see it as like a portfolio. It's a place for people to land. It might be a place that people like send. So we don't have that same struggle. But from a standpoint of wanting to protect your brand assets, or maybe prepare it for, I like to tell people, you need to prepare for the big vision, because if you play small, it's generally going to put you, we're not lemonade stands anymore. You can roll right out onto the curb and you can start a lemonade stand. And a lot of us are operating our businesses when we first start in that same way. It's almost as though we don't want to go too far down the road, because then it might become a real thing. And then all of a sudden we like turn around and we're like, oh, this is like a very real thing, and I need to get a few things in place. And that happens to us all the time. We get that from clients where they've been in business 3 years and they haven't had any problems, luckily. And now they're like, we're starting to grow. And I realized, like, I don't even know if I can use my business. Or someone's been in the business for 3 years and they get a cease and desist. And they had no clue that they were infringing on an existing trademark. And sometimes we can find wiggle room for them to coexist. Sometimes we can't. And so it's very, everyone's so different. But I would say the bounds of your intellectual property and how many places you can have it is like, it so suits your business. But the reality is that those core pieces of your brand you want to own. And the only true way to own those is going to be through registered copyrights and registered trademark. And the reason that that's the case, I just spent like 2 hours in the DMV. So like this concept of registration is very on my mind.
Exactly.
The only way to really make things real and make others aware of the rights that you're claiming is to put them on the National Register. So without putting them on the register, you don't actually give people what we call constructive notice. You don't have to say, I don't have to prove that you know that the name of my firm is Guide My Business and that I'm intending consumers to, when they hear that name, that the business name, that they think of me.
Right.
I don't have to prove with constructive notice that happens. However, if I didn't register my trademark, I would have to prove you knew I existed. That you had constructive notice that you had noticed that I intended, to be using this name. Yes, you get common law rights, but they do not go as far as registration rights. And it really does play a large weight in a transaction like a merger and acquisition. In the event that your business were purchased, a registration number is a big part of that. And it's also a big part, surprisingly, in helping you to kind of contain what your trademark covers. So if you're selling a business that's somewhat multifaceted, or you've developed a personal brand that's somewhat multifaceted, it helps put boundaries around what exactly it is that you're selling. I recently sold a business that was the person's name. She was not a personal brand. She very much has a personal presence on her social media, but it was named in her business, but the business was named after herself. We are in a constant struggle with her trying to navigate living in her industry and working in her industry and carving out a way for her to show up with her name. Because as part of the transaction, she had to sell her
sign
name
it over
and her trademarks.
Crazy.
So it's a long way about saying that there's so many ways it can be done. And depending on the type of business you are, you may be heavily relying on your personal name. I actually was cringing a little when you were telling me the story because I was like, please don't involve your personal name.
I know.
Because that gets messy to sell.
Totally.
But you were looking at it from the other standpoint of, where does the value come from a business transaction? And a lot of that for her was the lead generation of her Instagram. And oftentimes I will say that's a little bit of a roundabout way of pulling out a really big asset.
Completely.
Because when people buy and sell businesses, you buy and sell the domains. You buy and sell your social handles. Like you're buying and selling, you're selling your, customer list. So that stuff is really intellectual property tied to the value of your business. And so we have to be really careful the more and more that we're pushed to show up in a personal sense to draw that line and decide what we would be willing to give up in a transaction like that.
Well, and I think it's going to become even more so as we're all in the digital landscape, as we're into Web3 and metaverse and all these things where like your likeness and AI generation and deep fakes, like that can all get compromised or replicated. So if you are going to sell your name as a brand, like what are you giving rights to? We don't even know the technology that's going to come down the pipeline. You don't even know. But we did the same thing when we registered like Kiss My Aesthetic, the podcast trademark name.
Yeah.
Because we do have the trademark for that. And you had to select the categories under which you wanted trademarked, right? And the Kardashians are notorious for this because they have Kylie skin, Kylie table, Kylie couch, Kylie chair, Kylie they're not using all of these things, but they need to own the trademark to then go after the person, right? That may try to open a competitor product. But for ours, we had the Kiss My Aesthetic trademark. And I went to Amazon for some reason, or I Googled Kiss My Aesthetic to just see what was popping up on Google. And on Amazon, there was a seller selling my logo of my podcast on t-shirts. So not only was it the name, but it was also like the logo of the show. They just like scooped it from the site and were selling it. And so we shut that down real quick because it's like, hello, that's an immediate violation of the trademark. But had we not had that process, and that person, you could get yourself into like a muddy situation, right? Like if you don't have it registered and the other person notices you don't have it registered and then they go and register your trademark of your thing, like where are your grounds as a business owner if you guys do have like a same or similar name in the same industry? Like how do you start to figure out who actually owns the thing?
So in the instance you gave where like they scooped it, they registered it before you, but you were using it first. You have common law rights. And you would actually move, you would call us because this enters like, litigation. You would call us, you would actually move to cancel their trademark registration. And so you would have to first submit an application yourself because you can't just cancel someone else's without like taking the attempt to protect your own rights. So you have to put in an application and then you would have to move to cancel their trademark. And you would say that you believed you were canceling their trademark because you had prior rights.
Interesting.
And then they would have to defend that. The reason that you mentioned it's so easy on like a source like Amazon, Etsy, a lot of those kind of third-party sellers to get someone like that removed is because you had a registration. Without a registration, you would have to be like, and this is my podcast, and here's
I've been
some
doing
information.
It since 2019, and believe me.
All of this. And you like, it would be probably a runaround. Luckily, I will say we do this a lot for both of those platforms. And when you get a registration number, they are so quick. Etsy is the fastest I've ever seen.
Really?
And so if you give a registration number, they pull it down immediately. And if the person violates it more than like multiple times, they'll actually close that seller down completely. We had someone one time, we were doing it on behalf of a client, complain that like if we filed like a complaint, because we sometimes will send notice before and be like, hey, I don't know if you know that you're doing this. Like,
but this is my business name.
And so we did something and, thrown the cease and desist out, into their world. They knew about it. They wanted to like go back and forth with us, but it was like a very clear, like they had taken the images from my client's website. They were using their trademarks. Like it was just like an open and shut, like, no, you just have to stop doing it. And they were like, please don't submit and open a case for us because we'll get shut down as a business. We've done this too many times. And I'm like, no. That you think that's going to work? Like, I think we submitted the, complaint so that they would kind of shut down that business because they had just made a business of doing something like that. So that's the problem. I think in the world of AI that we're entering into, I think trademark and copyright have become more and more important. And maybe we should start with what trademark is and what copyright is and a little bit subtle difference. So trademark is your brand, like think aesthetics. When you think of, Nike, you think of the swoosh, you think of Just Do It, you think of, Nike, the name itself. All of those are brand elements that are going to point to the brand itself, even colors. So, and this is so bad, but like I can picture the like delivery trucks, the brown delivery trucks.
UPS. Yes.
Everybody, you see that color brown, you think UPS. Well, they have it trademarked. They actually like that is such like a part of their brand identity.
Signature branding.
They have it trademarked. Target, the little Target symbol, trademarked, right? All of those things are things that help direct a consumer to a brand. And why does the US government care? Well, because you hear good things about a certain business and you want to go buy from that business and support that business. And someone else is just trying to piggyback off of their goodwill and everything that they've built. And then they get a less superior product. And the government obviously thinks that is not a good idea, that we actually need. It's funny because in a roundabout way, it's not really about the business itself, right? It is because it has huge brand value to us to protect our business assets. However, it's actually about the consumer. And at the end of the day, they're here to protect the consumer from being confused, which gets into a little bit of what we talked about like, how do we know? What if it's confusing? What if people are in a similar space? We'll table that and we'll come back as soon as I define what a copyright is. So we've said anything that helps a consumer identify in one way, shape, or form your business, that is a trademark. If you have like a really cool graphic or something that is, it's not word-based, that you do art, a book, music, anything that think of like a very creative, medium, that is a copyright. So copywriting workbooks, copywriting, your art, your designs, your fabric prints, your, that will all work. If you have call it like a sweatshirt with a word on it, you would head towards trademark. And we would be very intentional in how we filed the trademark design and the trademark, because you would have to prove that it's a collection and that it's creating a brand itself. Otherwise, they're going to say it's merely an ornamental. So there's a lot of little caveats here and there, but you can find ways to protect your brand and prevent other people from coming in and copying you, because I've seen it all the time. I just saw the other day, someone has a beautiful sweater print. She was like, does these really beautiful wool sweaters. And she was like, I just bought my sweater for $20 on a fast fashion website. And she was like, let's see what it looks like. And so she opens the package. She was like, the material was different. The colors were more, like a more vibrant and like not a great way.
Yeah. Garish,
as we would say. Wasn't quite the same, but they went on, they decided they liked her product. They just designed it. And without a copyright on the design and the art that was on the sweater, it's going to be really hard for her to prove. Yes, it's very similar, but very hard to prove. And you just have more rights in general. And I think people are less likely to mess around when you can send a cease and desist with a registration number. Otherwise, we're going rounds of, you must have known, we have to prove that you must have known. And that can be a little bit harder. So copyright, think art, think creative elements. Trademark, think brand.
Okay. So now this leads to a different curiosity. And this was not a question that was on my list, but since we're already there, we're talking about Etsy, we're talking about Amazon, we're talking about resellers. For all of these brands, and I know we see them on Instagram and on TikTok Shop and all these places, like where is the line between like fan art and intellectual property infringement? Because if you're a super fan of Taylor Swift or Disney or Chappell Roan or whatever, and you're making art inspired by the artist, at what point are you infringing on their like merch capabilities?
Unfortunately, I feel like the world that we have lived in has encouraged people to infringe on their rights, like other people's rights.
Yeah.
Like, I even think that the social media platforms have like really leaned into this and really encouraged this. It's like when I see someone do like someone else's like Instagram post and they're like on a green screen and they're like, we're watching them react to the other person's like really great content. And you're like,
you're monetizing off of you're piggybacking on my stuff.
Like that's someone else's stuff. Like I want to watch that video. I want to watch you nodding your head to their really great video. So I think we've gone down that road a little too far. And I was actually listening to a podcast where people were talking about like, the way people love celebrities is just changed. And I think we've seen so much of it, we're a little desensitized. But the reality is that Taylor Swift's brand up and down is trademarked. I don't think she's going to for all I know, people are getting cease and desist on a regular basis. That would be my thought, is that more than we think that those types of shops are being shut down, because in order to protect your rights, you can't just go register and then just never enforce them. Because if you don't enforce them and everyone just starts like trampling all over them, the government actually will not continue to honor registrations if you're not continuing to use it and or if you're not continuing to protect it. And so my guess is that like cease and desist letters go out on a regular basis on someone like a Taylor Swift. And good for her, right? Like no one else should be piggybacking and monetizing her name and her image and all of those things that we all see. So that I think is definitely infringement. So if you're an Etsy artist and you're listening to this and you are, making Disney t-shirts, you are,
like the Mickey ears have to be trademarked, right?
Oh
like
yeah, I'm
copyrighted.
Sure. I mean, I don't know off the top of my head, but I would assume so. So it's funny. I think of things so much differently because of what I know. So like my daughter, I have 2 young kids. We watch Disney all the time. And when you start Disney, movies now, you'll notice that they're doing their old like whistling Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
That's because they're trying to continue to protect
their trademark. Exactly.
Those rights. Like, because they're using them. They're like, hi, we're still using this. And we don't want this to go into the public domain.
Okay. So explain public domain too, because I think this is really interesting, because public domain from my perspective is such an asset as an artist, as a designer, right? Because I'm constantly accessing public domain artworks, archives, everything like this, because I'm an art history nerd. And so I love that stuff. And also because I feel like it just adds so much more richness to things that I design. So I'm not using Canva templates and Pinterest and Spo and stuff, like looking at stuff on Instagram, but like actually pulling from public domain. But explain how things end up in public domain, because I don't think people understand how it becomes usable.
Yeah. So there's a couple of avenues. And one, of course, is someone created it for that use, or they're okay with this
royalty free happy.
Like they're okay. They, in some way, shape, or form, they were content with however they benefited from putting it in the public domain. So some people choose to create and put it in the public domain. Otherwise, copyright, you have a right for a period of years. I believe it's so funny. I am not our intellectual property specialist anymore.
Well, we'll get back onto the things that's actually your specialty, but this is just a personal curiosity at this point.
I don't remember the main, the numbers, but don't quote me. I believe it's the life of the creator plus 65 years. Don't hold me to that, but I believe it's that. We can fact check that later.
Of course.
But the reason that exists is that so things like beautiful books, beautiful
paintings, sculptures, patterns,
poetry,
fabrics,
things, all of that, that comes back around and actually is available to the public, because there is a benefit in, people, like you said, being able to enjoy and, bring back to life, art from long ago, and creative works from long ago. And, that happens to songs, that happens to a lot of things. And the reason I think that, it's plenty of a long time, right? They're giving you the benefit during your life, and they're giving you the benefit while you're, family, hopefully valuing, benefiting the estate. So the time is a long time. Trademark is for 5 or 10 years, depending on different conditions, as you continue to use it. So you can keep refiling and extending. Like that's not going to all of a sudden, like FedEx just is no longer trademarked.
Sure.
So you get to benefit that. Copyright is just a little bit different, but the nice thing is that it's such a long window and you're not continuing to re-register. That copyright is a very underutilized tool for creatives, because if I was creative enough to create art, you better believe I'd be out there copywriting it, licensing it all day long if I had a gift like that. I do not have a gift that way. So I'm not doing that, but that's a really excellent way. And actually the price of a copyright, some people are like, oh, I don't know, I bet it's just so expensive. If you actually are doing it for unpublished works, like if I was an artist, I would be copyright registering in bulk all of my designs as they're coming in before I put them out into the world, because it's actually easier to do. You can add, Chelsea Udall on our team is incredible and she's amazing at this. She knows the actual number, but you can put multiple in a collection, images in one application. So you're saving incredible amounts of money. But the moment that you make it public, that it's published work, I believe you can only put one published work per application. So if you actually do unpublished work, you can really get good bang for your buck.
Protect it first.
So there's all these little caveats, and our team's goal is to really guide people through the process in a way that in general, though, yes, you have to pay a third party, we'll save you money. We'll tell you what classes to file under, classes you'll get the benefit of what we call related classes. So you don't necessarily need to file under every class under the sun that you may or may not touch. We'll kind of have a sense based on all of the things that we've seen, right? Where you'll get from, if you apply for this class, you're going to be covered by these 3. So don't worry and being kind of duplicative. So we find ways to be really strategic, especially, when we have to deliver bad news or someone's in a questionable place. It happens a lot. There is a ton of businesses out there, a ton of brands. There's a ton of registered trademarks. So navigating registered trademarks these days is not easy. And it's not necessarily, we're circling back to something we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
It's not an exact. It's not things that are identical exact. The actual legal standard is confusingly similar. And who's confused?
The consumer.
A general
everyone.
Consumer. And so I'll have someone and be like, well, I don't do that. I do this. And I'm like, if I were to come to you, I would say you're both videographers.
Right.
I don't care that one's for weddings and one's for businesses, right? That's not the distinction that I'm thinking of specifically, but that's a really good example. And so that's not something that would be that would be deemed confusingly similar if 2 videography companies, no matter what they video, had the same name. And it's not just the same spelling. It's the way it sounds phonetically, because we know that there's lots of plays on the phonetics, the spelling of things. And that is very much part of what is deemed confusingly similar.
And from the branding side, like we have this conversation all the time with clients, like they're trying to land on a new name. They don't like the name that they had before. They're growing into a new industry. And we have in our contract, thanks to you guys, that we're not responsible for doing your trademark research. Like we will give you suggestions but it's actually very simple to just search the USPTO and see what's registered, what's not. So whenever we're thinking of names, but as more people start online businesses and more people come into this space, it's like, not only are you looking for the copyright to be available or the trademark to be available, but you want also the domain, the social handles, the usernames, the course program naming nomenclature, like the levels of the whatevers, like the way that you're naming all of your products. Like there's so much that can go into it. And it can feel from a business owner side, like, what the heck am I going to be able to name my business anyway? Because everything's taken is the feedback that I always hear.
We get that from so many people. And that's why I'm so happy so we use obviously like a specialized software.
Sure.
Because we don't rely on only the USPTO, because again, it's not direct hit. It's not only direct hit. It's phonetics. It's translations. It's so many things. And so to assume that we can search well enough in enough different queries to actually get like a wide enough like view. We actually use a software that searches not only the USPTO. I mean, we get Facebook pages, we get business listings. Like, so someone files like the same business entity in Maine, we're going to see that. So we find out all of this information as people are going into the branding. And so we like to say, and we like to work with companies like you and say, hey, come to us when you're thinking of the name, not when someone more talented than us has designed the beautiful brand aesthetic. Because I've definitely had that happen. I've had someone come to me and they were a referral from a friend of ours who had a branding agency. They had gone through the whole branding process with this client. They launched their new brand to a cease and desist letter.
You hate to hear it. You hate to hear it.
And the person who created it was like mortified. They were like, I feel terrible. Like, because I can't give them their money back. I have put my hard-earned effort
I delivered the service.
So for the designer, anyone who's a designer listening to this, much like you, in your contracts, I want you to have an indemnity provision that says that they will indemnify you for like the cost of, them giving you something that maybe infringes on someone's product. And I want you to very clearly state that you're not responsible for the legal legwork of making sure that the brand that they want to develop or the things that they already give you don't infringe on a third party. So if you're the business owner trying to think of the name, do your due diligence yourself. Either hire us, hire another legal team, really, really wade into it, because again, we look at so many things, because not only once you have a registered trademark, you can feel safe, but if you didn't know that like someone had a common law right, there's always going to be this like little question in your head if they're going to move to cancel your mark. And so we just always want to give all of the information so our clients can make an informed decision. So, the person who's listening to this, whatever you can do to put yourself in the best position to be informed, that's what I want you to do. And so you actually are best, doing the due diligence of a clearance mark, clearance on your trademark, and finding out like what to do. On that particular case, I will say we got incredibly lucky. And the brand that wrote the cease and desist did not have to be as kind as they were, but I truly believe that they were just a very kind brand. They agreed to basically differentiate based on a slight variation of the logo. And they allowed them to continue relatively uninterrupted. And since then that client has actually been a long-term incredible client. We actually adore their team. And it was just one of those things. They just didn't think that in their space, and to be honest, they had a really distinct name. And that's what I'm looking for. So if you're thinking of business names, I want it to be obscure.
Yes.
we like made up words, made up words. They're called fanciful. Fanciful made up words are the best words. After that, I really want you to do something else that's distinctive. And maybe it hints at the product or service by either giving elements or descriptions of it. But I don't want you to come right out and say it, because you actually can't trademark something that is just distinctive, that is, generally descriptive. It has to be distinctive. Now you can gain over time. Like if you had a business called the marketing agency and it became like so well known and you'd been doing it for 20 years, and you actually may have an opportunity to trademark that if you could show that it had become so distinctive that there was really a brand there. But oftentimes that's very hard to do. So instead, when you come up with something that is obscure, Apple for technology, obscure, Airbus.
Yep.
Has anyone ever thought of this? Airbus, airplane. I'm like, oh, that's really smart. They basically like identified what it is that they do and hinted at it, and they came up with a word that didn't exist.
Right. No, it's a fun brainstorm and it's a fun mind exercise. And on the creative side, like I love it, but it's also, you're always thinking in the back of your mind, like, I don't want to suggest something that someone's going to fall in love with and plan their whole company around to then, end up in that situation where you're in a trademark issue, you know?
No, if you're a designer, I would find, a trusted, legal team. We do trademark and copyright across the country. I mean, we have clients across the globe. Find a trusted legal team, whether it's us or somebody else that you can send clients to. Be upfront with clients, build it into a slight part of your process that says, identifies if they have, ask if they have registered trademarks at the very beginning on intake, and then remind them, like, if you don't have registered trademarks, like, we don't do the due diligence for you. And we know that this is a big investment. So, if parallel to this, you want to be doing some due diligence on that end, here's a great referral. And so there's a lot of ways that as a creator, you can protect yourself when you're hiring and you're working with clients that have their own brands. As a business owner, find someone that you trust that can give you really solid information and help you make a decision, because you won't actually have a registered trademark for probably a year. The process is long. And so you need really good information at the point of deciding whether or not to file and what's the most strategic way to file. You need good information then, because you're likely going to launch a brand and you're going to not hear back for a year.
You're going to forget that you did it, and you'll get the email and it's like, congratulations. Like, oh, I forgot.
We want you to be set up, and we want you to not be playing small during that time. And we also don't want you to be worrying, about whether or not it's going to land. And some people take risks. We have seen clients that are like, I just have to try. And we're like, more power to you. That's fine. But everyone has their own journey, and it's never too late to start, even if you've had a business for several years. And I was famous when I started my, law firm. Oh, I'm just going to be like local. I'm going to do a few M&A transactions here and there. And I'm not trying to light the world on fire. And now we're doing trademark for people in Dubai. Now we're truly a global presence, and my business name needs to be protected. So we have 2 registered trademarks ourselves. And we've done hundreds for clients. And it's a very integral part of your brand that people aren't thinking of. And I know you probably have incredibly creative people on here. Protect your art.
Definitely.
What you're creating is a gift. I wish I had. Protect it, because there's a lot of ways for you to monetize it. And like you said, there is such a world that we haven't even scratched the surface with understanding when it comes to AI. If I was an artist and I had art, I would be copywriting everything.
Yeah.
I really would.
True. Very true. Very cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your insights with us. It was a pleasure to talk to you. We could keep talking about so many different things in like the legal business space. So maybe there's a part 2 episode that we should record. But where can everyone find, follow, connect with Guide My Business, maybe hire you guys, plug yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can jump onto our website, guidemybusiness.co. You can also find us on Instagram at guidemybusiness. And we've actually recently moved our newsletter over to Substack. So you can find us at Guide My Business on Substack, and you can subscribe to the same newsletter that we send our clients once a month. Only once a month, no more, no less. For some really valuable information. And maybe 1 month won't be anything about what your business does, but I swear that there's things that I'm like, I need people to know. And we really don't waste your time, because I don't take being in your inbox lightly. So find us on there, and we can point you to wonderful, wonderful information. My team is incredible. So if you have the chance of speaking with any of them, tell them that Michelle sent you, and we would be happy to support you.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Lauren. We really appreciate it. You guys, if you loved the episode, don't forget to share, send it to a friend, post it on your stories, tag us. We'd love to see it. And thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time. Bye.